much, everyone, for joining us. As I was just saying, we have folks from Xylem, as well as external partners of ours from that we've connected with through the Stroud Water Research Center, joining us on today's webinar. So really excited to have a diverse group from around the world with different interests and experiences joining us. My name's Emma Hausman. I'm with Xylem. I manage our global social impact programming at Xylem. So I'm really pleased today to be with you to kick off the Protect Your Watershed Watermark Challenge. So for the months of June and July, we're going to be really focused on activities that we can do in our own communities that have an impact on watershed health. And so throughout the 2 months, you're going to be seeing that we're partnering this year with the Stroud Water Research Center, real experts on this issue that have decades of experience in the space. We're really excited to learn a lot from them, to learn about new tools and activities that we can do to have a benefit and to have a positive impact on our watershed. And all of these sessions are going to be recorded, including today's. So stay tuned for that. They'll be accessible both internally for Xylem and externally. So to kick things off, I just wanted to set the scene around the exciting 2 months that we have ahead of us. The Protect Your Watershed event's already ongoing. I'll share in a moment a little more detail, but our really signature event as part of this is our Watershed Bingo Challenge, an awesome chance to activate funds for donations for the Stroud Water Research Center and other amazing nonprofits working in the water space. You'll take part in this by participating in activities like invasive species removals, cleanups, education to raise awareness of what you're learning today with students and others in the community, and much more. We encourage you throughout the 2 months to post to either Xylem Now if you're with Xylem, or out externally on social media. You can tag Xylem or use the hashtag Watershed Moment, tag Stroud Center as well. We'd love to see what you guys are up to. And all of these materials are going to be available externally. So on our Xylem website, I'll post the Protect Your Watershed hub as part of the call today. You'll see it in the chat. All right, so the Bingo Challenge, just a kind of quick overview of this. You'll see a variety of activities that you can take part in. And as you go throughout the month, cross this off. You can print this out or edit it as a PDF. And if you complete 5 in a row in any direction or complete the full board, you can submit that through this QR code or the link here. And you'll activate, if you're external, you'll activate donations to the Stroud Center in the amount of $10 or $100. If you're internal with Xylem, you'll see my Watermark rewards funds added to your account that you can donate to Stroud Center or to a local NGO of your choice. And so today's activity, the Watershed Health and You, as well as taking action in the tools that you'll learn about, that counts as one of the squares. So you've already completed one of the actions, and you can get started now. And just to look ahead at the upcoming seminars, again, all will be recorded, but these will be taking place throughout the 2 months and are a great way to tune in and learn a lot and yeah, interact with Stroud Center. So feel free to ask questions as we go today. Would love to hear from you in the chat. This will be really interactive. I'll turn it over to Scott in a moment, but just wanted to give you a quick introduction to the Stroud Water Research Center. We became connected with them as Xylem through our Reservoir Center in DC, and they're a partner there at Reservoir, and we're excited to collaborate with them on this initiative. If you've studied freshwater sciences in college or in your background, you've likely encountered principles of ecosystem functioning that actually originated from the work of Stroud Water Research Center. They were founded in 1967, and they work to advance knowledge and stewardship of freshwater systems through global scientific research, environmental education, and water restoration. Watershed restoration that helps businesses, landowners, policymakers, individuals, all of you, make informed decisions that affect water quality and availability all around the world. So they're located on the banks of a wild and scenic river in Avondale, Pennsylvania, and they are an independent nonprofit organization uniquely dedicated to freshwater science. And they work at watershed scales with interdisciplinary teams. So today's program highlights Monitor My Watershed, which is part of their Wiki Watershed toolkit. It's available online at no cost, and it's used around the world. Some of the tools focused on today will be admittedly US specific, but the majority are broadly available around the world. And I think this is definitely still really valuable and applicable for all of our colleagues and partners tuning in. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Scott from Stroud Center to kick us off today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Emma. It was a great introduction, and you teed up my first slide perfectly. Thank you all for joining. We're really excited to be speaking to people not only across the US, but around the world. So seeing some far-flung places in there. So thanks for joining us. It's a real pleasure to speak to the Xylem audience. We're fans of Xylem. In fact, we have some staff in the field today who are using some YSI equipment. So go YSI. Thanks for all that you guys are doing to build good equipment for monitoring the environment. So the Stroud Center is really dedicated to the issue that we're going to talk about today. And that is thinking about streams and rivers and water quality and the health of our freshwater ecosystems, really through the lens of the watershed. And that's where it all starts in the context of how we think about and study freshwater systems, and our science and our education are dedicated to that perspective. So it does really all start with the watershed scale. And so let's start right off thinking about what watersheds are. A watershed is the area that collects water and funnels it to one location on the earth. And usually we think about that as funneling water to a stream or a river. So this is what you already know. Water flows downhill. I'm not sharing anything new at this point. But it really helps, if you haven't thought about that concept very much, it helps to have a tool to use to play around with and explore that. So I'm going to switch gears here and share a tool that's a really fun way to do just that. And now you should be seeing the Global Watersheds tool. Give me a heads up in the audience if you're seeing the Global Watersheds webpage here.
I think we might still be seeing the slide, Scott.
Okay. All right. And we're going to link in the chat so that you can go to this website yourself and follow along and play around. So again, what's a watershed? It's a place where it's an area on the earth that funnels water to a common place. So we're going to just play around here a little bit with this tool, and you're hopefully doing the same thing. So we have someone with us today from Ireland. So let's go check out Ireland and play with this concept. So if we were a raindrop falling on the earth, we're going to trace a path and pretend that we we fell here in Ireland, and it's going to trace the path that water droplet would flow down through the hills into the rivers and streams along the way. And what we're going to see, if we keep dropping raindrops in approximately this region, you're going to see that water is flowing as it falls throughout this region to the same place, down here at Limerick into the ocean. So that's indicating to us that there's a watershed that's funneling all of this water that's falling past this common point into the ocean at Limerick. So that's one way to think about a watershed, is imagine you're the drop of water that falls, and you're going to travel a path to the ocean. It's not always that simple. You can have a watershed that's fed by, you can soak into the ground if you're a drop of water, but you're generally going to follow the same path, albeit a little bit slower, through the soil, through the watershed, until you emerge into a stream or a river. So that's one way to think about watersheds, and it's a fun tool here to play around with. Another way that you can imagine a watershed is by carving out the area of land upstream from a point that's going to drain past you. That wasn't a good example. Let me try that again. So if we look at a point on the earth down at this river, and you can do this on your own anywhere in the world with this app, you're going to look at this tool is going to delineate for you the area of the earth that's going to funnel water past where we dropped that point. So this is another fun way to learn about a watershed, to learn what watershed you're in, to learn what water flows past you. And we're going to come back to this concept in a few minutes and dig into the details of this a little bit more. But hopefully you're finding that tool a really simple way to think about what a watershed is at any one place and where water moves, because that at the heart of everything that we're going to talk about is a fundamental concept. In fact, when we think about a lot of things that we do on the earth and a lot of things that that we focus on, whether it's agriculture, whether it's thinking about pollution, thinking about our drinking water, all of those things that we deal with, that we manage, that we rely on, that we value, all are rooted in the same concept of a watershed. Now, a lot of times we move water from one area to the earth across watershed boundaries with pipes. We do a lot of that. We've been doing that for a long time. We're pretty good at moving water around. But without that infrastructure, the watershed here is going to dictate how water moves and how much water we have to use for these various purposes. Let's also remember that fish, particularly anadromous fish, whether you're talking about salmon in the Pacific, or you're talking about shad and river herring on the east coast of the US and elsewhere, those animals are using cues from a specific watershed to find their way back to their spawning ground. So that's an amazing concept, that fish can remember and have the ability to detect the subtle cues that are unique to an individual watershed and find their way back there. So watersheds play this really central role in a lot of aspects of what we do. So let's go into that a little bit more detail. So again, the watershed health of wherever we're talking about in the earth dictates the health of our streams and rivers. So this is a really fundamental concept. Again, this is how we think at the Stroud Center. We think about the watershed first and the characteristics of the watershed, perhaps those things that can be improved on the watershed that we're doing as humans. And we think about those as the drivers of what happens in streams and rivers and how to make adjustments. So I'm going to introduce you to another tool that hopefully you're going to find helpful as an introduction to thinking about these issues and thinking in this watershed context. So I'm going to share another tool with you. And this one was developed by the World Wildlife Fund. And its ultimate goal is to inform corporate entities about how they can manage their water, have a lower impact on the environment through their operations. But it also happens to be a really good introductory tool as we're talking about watersheds. We're talking about the effects of what happens on land to the streams and rivers and water bodies that we rely on. So you have the link in the chat there. You might want to go explore this on your own. We have someone with us from France, so let's zoom in on France. This, like the earlier tool I showed you, is useful because it's applicable anywhere in the US. So on the left-hand side, we're going to be able to choose different things to map in this tool. And we can, for example, here, let's look at a water quality index. Now that's, as you can see here on the left-hand side, there's a brief description of what they're doing. They're incorporating biochemical oxygen demand, conductivity, and nitrogen in surface waters as an indicator of water quality. So these are some basic parameters that have global applicability. And we can see what I want you to notice from this map. Unfortunately, most of it is red. So there's a lot of areas at risk is what it's showing us. But what I want you to notice is that as we zoom in here, you'll see that it's defining these areas based on watershed. So again, the watershed boundaries are one of the core ways that we model and map and display and think about these different characteristics. So in this case, all of the fine gray lines that you're looking at on the map are watershed boundaries, and there are some larger river basins imposed around them. But again, emphasizing that as we think about watersheds and we think about the characteristics of watersheds that are helping or harming our freshwater resources, again, we think about that in this watershed context. There are some other tools that you might want to explore in this World Wildlife Fund tool. One of the other things that we think a lot about in terms of freshwater science is the fragmentation of our rivers and streams. And this is fundamentally related to dams and road crossings that provide barriers to the fish and organisms that are moving through our river systems. So again, another layer in this mapping feature that you might want to explore in your own area that's relevant to you, and get a feel for how this tool is rating those areas. And as with any tool on the web, we always need to remember to go to the documentation. And in this case, World Wildlife Fund has some documentation that explains how they came up with these metrics and how to interpret them. So again, that information is there. Okay, so hopefully that tool is providing you a little bit of context wherever you are in the world. I know we had somebody else from India. I hope you're able to explore India and get an impression of what's happening in the area that's meaningful to you. So we're going to take a US-centric perspective for the rest of the presentation, because it's the area that we have a lot of folks here, and something, obviously, this is what we know a lot about here at the Stroud Center, is what's going on in the United States. So within the United States, the EPA has developed a tool called How's My Waterway. And some of you maybe are already familiar with this. If you haven't explored it, I encourage you to do so. Again, we're thinking about freshwater, but this tool is going to, again, emphasize freshwater in the watershed context. So let me take you to How's My Waterway, and you can see the link in the chat there if you want to go and explore that yourself. Let's see to where I need to be. Okay, so this tool will start out by searching for a location in the US. And let me scroll back up and see, let's see, Ashland, Virginia, we'll start there. So this tool, again, specific to the United States, but it's going to do a couple of things. First of all, on the left, again, it's going to take us to the watershed that Ashland, Virginia is within. And it's going to give us a lot of information here to explore on the right-hand side. So on the overview tab, it's going to summarize some fundamental information about the watershed, who's monitoring there, and we can drill down on those locations and see what's going on. We can look at permitted dischargers, again, those entities that have a permit from the EPA to discharge pollutants to surface waters in the United States. So again, if we're thinking about your watershed, the place that's meaningful to you, the place that you want to learn about, the place that you want to learn where the problems are, where the solutions are, this is a tool that's going to help you go a little bit farther down that path. So beyond that, the tabs that we're going to use going to the right here, starting with swimming, are going to show you the number of impaired water bodies. And of course, you can drill down and zoom in on those areas, again, that are meaningful to you, where you recreate, the places that you value, to learn about what's impaired, what's not. And so within that, let me give you a little bit more context. Some of you may be familiar, but as I'm going to emphasize here going forward through this talk, when we think about watersheds, we think about watershed health. We want to do something. We want to take some action. We want to become engaged. Part of that process is learning about the systems that regulate our streams and rivers and freshwater and environmental condition in the state and in the locale that we live in, or those places that we value. So within the context of US clean water law, there are things that states define how their waters are going to be classified as either achieving some designated use, and achieving that use means we're all good. Not achieving that use means that we're impaired. When a waterway is impaired, it means that some action is going to have to be taken by the state. State laws differ. Virginia law is different than North Carolina law, is different than Pennsylvania law. So you'll see differences depending on where you are. But that's what we're looking at here when we talk about impaired. And that's what I want to start as we start thinking about taking action. It's about learning how states and how your local government and how the federal government regulates water. Because it's only through learning about that we can learn how to take action that affects some outcome. So again, you can explore more in this tool for your locale. You can scroll through aquatic life. You can learn about where drinking water comes from in this area, and you can drill down on where your drinking water comes from and ways to obtain information about the health of your drinking water. And so on and so forth. So How's My Waterway is a good place to start if you're within the US, to drill down and start to learn about, again, what's in your watershed and what's happening there. So hopefully you found the link, and that might be setting you off on a course of learning. So everything that we've talked about so far, I've shown you the watershed delineation tool. We've talked about the World Wildlife Fund mapping tool. All of these tools have been basically static maps. They're showing you some derived product. In the case of the World Wildlife Fund, they had documentation describing the models they use to show you the data that they were showing you. So those were static maps. But what I want to present to you now and give you just a little teaser on, it's not enough time to really give you a training, but I want to give you a teaser on a tool that you can use within the United States to run and explore models of the different pollutants and the different characteristics of your watershed or the place or stream that's meaningful to you, to learn about how we can take action on the land through our farms and in our cities to reduce pollutant loads and reduce some of the contaminants that get to surface water. So that tool is called Model My Watershed. We'll throw that link in the chat, and hopefully you'll go and start playing around and maybe following me as I go through this tool with just a few clicks to start to explore how you can use this tool to not only learn about where you are in your watershed and freshwater resources, but to start to lead you towards what can one do? What can my town do? What can my municipality do? And to achieve some impact on bettering our streams and freshwater systems. So again, this is a modeling scenario. And what we're going to start with is just a map interface, but we're going to go deeper than that. So let me find a place let's go to Cary, North Carolina. And we'll start there. So the first step in this journey of using Model My Watershed is to find the locations meaningful to you. That's what this is all about. Zoom into the place that is meaningful to you. So here we are in Cary, North Carolina. We can see that we're up on a hill and in Cary, and there's watersheds draining and really in all directions away from us throughout North Carolina. So the first step, as we've been talking about, is to delineate a watershed around you. So on the left-hand side, as you start to use this tool, you found where you are on the map, and now we want to delineate a watershed. And again, I'm going to zoom quickly through this process. I hope that you're watching and kind of getting the flavor for how to do this. There's lots of documentation that I'll steer you back to at the end of the presentation here so that you can go back to this tool and really learn it piece by piece. But this is kind of a windshield tour. Okay, so the first step here is to delineate a watershed, and I'm going to randomly select this watershed. The tool is running, and it's going to define the watershed boundaries that drain the north side of Cary, North Carolina up into Lake Crabtree. And it's within that boundary that we're going to start understanding what's happening within this watershed context and start to take some pretend actions to see what can help address water pollution issues. So we see our watershed boundary defined here. This is 7 square kilometers. And as we go forward here, we're going to see information about this watershed, about how many streams are there, about the land use within the watershed, soils, the climate, point sources of pollution, as we saw on How's My Waterway. We're going to look at various point sources of pollution and where they are in the watershed. And within that context, we're going to explore the different sources of pollution and how we can affect those. So again, Model My Watershed is a modeling tool. So what it's doing right now is it's capturing information about this watershed, and it's within that context that we're going to start exploring ways to change what's happening. So we'll give that tool just a minute further to run. And depending on where you are in the US and where you're modeling, this can take longer and slower periods of time. Here we are. Okay, so we're gonna look at land use. All right, and we see that in Cary, North Carolina, this watershed that we're looking at is predominantly low intensity development. So we're going to come back to that in just a minute, knowing that this is a very urban area. Next, we're going to run a model. And again, I'm zooming through this really quickly. This model is going to take all of those different attributes of land use and climate, rainfall, temperature, and it's going to run a model to predict on an annual basis, a monthly basis, the amount of water that's moving through this watershed, the amount of sediment, nitrogen, and phosphorus. As we think about watersheds in the United States and globally, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment happen to be some of the core parameters that we measure and potentially the pollutants that in some places we care about the most. And so this tool, Model My Watershed, is really geared towards understanding the water, the sediment, the nitrogen, and the phosphorus within this system. And we understand that there are sources of those within the watershed. We also understand that there are places that that nitrogen, phosphorus, sediment goes to be stored. And those are the good places. That's what we want. We want to sequester, in most cases, those pollutants within the watershed so that they don't propagate downstream and that they don't affect our freshwater resources. So the great tool, and what I want you to take away from this tool, is the ability to modify, to play scenarios out. It's an opportunity to say, what if? So we're looking at the model results for this watershed, and I'll draw your attention up here to this table at the top. And we see that from this watershed every year, we expect 146,000 kilograms of sediment and 1,300 kilograms of nitrogen, 85 kilograms of phosphorus. So again, those are potentially pollutants. We want to, in our landscapes, in our watersheds, we want to reduce those loadings. So how could we do that? Well, within the Model My Watershed tool in the upper right, you can add changes to this area. This is the fun part. This is the fun part about Model My Watershed. This is how you can play scenarios out to explore the what if scenarios. For example, I'm going to choose a conservation practice that's you've probably seen around your area, your watershed as you drive around. And these are infiltration and bioretention areas. So let's, for example, say that we employ some amount of infiltration and bioretention to absorb water and pollutants within our watershed. We define that, as I just did. And now this is the useful part of the tool, is being able to explore how that change affected your watershed. In this case, I didn't choose enough area to affect the change, but what you're looking at is the way things are now. That's blue. And the orange is the new scenario that you developed that I just put onto the watershed. And in this case, we don't see significant changes in either of these three parameters. But the point is for you to be able to play that scenario out and explore how a change, a conservation practice employed across this landscape, can affect pollutant loads. And that's the fun part, and that's the power of this particular tool, and that's why it's used widely in Pennsylvania by environmental managers who are tasked with reducing loads. They use this tool to develop those predicted reductions and plan what conservation practices will go on the land. Educators use this in educational contexts to explore and to teach the very principles that we've been talking about today. And nonprofits use this, conservation groups use this tool for exactly the same purposes. And so this is an example of a modeling tool, and it's the last of the four suites of online tools that I wanted to share with you. So again, there was a lot of information there quickly, so let me step you back and share with you, if you're interested in further using the Model My Watershed tool, I encourage you to go to the help page for Model My Watershed and learn more there and start your journey with the technical information. There are YouTube videos that describe this tool as well. So there's a lot of help for you to find in figuring out how to use this tool for your own application, which at the end of the day is trying to find ways that you can play an active role in changing some condition in your community to benefit freshwater resources downstream. So I kind of think about this as a four-part process, and there's no clear-cut answer. All of you are coming from different places with different interests and different passions and different problems. So there's no universal solution, but this pathway here is kind of what I would suggest is generically applicable. The first thing is to learn, is to explore some of these tools that I've shared with you today, and there are many, many more out there. And get your bearings, understand your watershed, understand the dynamics, understand the hydrology, and familiarize yourself so that you feel confident in thinking about these concepts. Second, people ask, what can I do? Find the thing that you're passionate about. If you fish, then you're going to find your passion there. If you're interested in chemistry, and pollution, then you're going to focus on the biogeochemistry. So everybody's going to have their own passion and interest, and that's the way to funnel and find your power in your place. And third, I mentioned before that the rules are different in different states and different countries, in different localities, different municipalities and towns. But you have to gain some type of appreciation for the rules that are in play that govern our freshwater resources at the township level, in your town, your community, and your state, and become familiar a little bit with the context that governs your freshwater resources. But that's complicated. And so you need allies. And so lastly, find your people. Find the group, the watershed organization, the conservation organization, wherever and whatever that might be, to find your allies and to find the people that you can learn with and that you can take action with. And I think at the end of the day, no matter where you are and no matter what problems you're facing, I think that this course of action, you need to find the community of people that you can support and that can support you in taking some action. So I hope that that was a little bit of an orientation for those of you who haven't thought about the watershed concept before, and the central role it plays in helping us understand freshwater resources and how to protect them. So with that, I hope that you will go forward and learn and take actions and improve the world around you in the ways that you're passionate about. And Emma, I'll turn to questions now.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Scott. Really, really great presentation and exciting tools. I've been playing around with them and look forward to beginning to master them myself. As I mentioned in the chat, I hope, especially our Xylem colleagues, but anyone joining, I think these are really great tools to incorporate into our presentations and events that we do with young people, with students, to really help visualize and provide context to some of the water awareness messages we aim to share and to impart. So we have a couple of questions. Let's see. The first one here is from Patricia. So she says, many of us help locally in planting riparian buffer strips. With this model, can we tell whether 50 or 100 or 150 foot widths really have any significant difference? And what's the minimum effective width based on actual outcomes?
Good questions. So the Model My Watershed tool can employ riparian buffers as one of the features that you can model scenarios from. And your other question was, what's the useful width and the ideal width? And the ideal width is at least 100 feet of riparian buffer. The gold standard would be 300 feet where that's possible. So those are, you really start to drive effectiveness of a buffer at 100 feet.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any other questions we have coming in? I see, yeah, those buffer widths are on each stream bank. Awesome. Great technical question. Anyone giving it a try and have any comments as well? Would love to hear anything you were surprised by when looking at your own watershed or risks associated with it. I have one question on, we've shared a lot of links today, so how easy will it be to share these later? These will all be circulated. Everyone that attended the recording, you'll get this, or sorry, the session. We'll send this out to your emails, but we also will make sure these are posted to that Protect Your Watershed website and are easily accessible. And Scott, is there a good place on the Stroud website to access a lot of this? Is it the Wiki.
Well, I will promote wikiwatershed.org, and Jen or Jess can share the link in the chat, but wikiwatershed.org is the Stroud Center's umbrella for all of for Model My Watershed and many other tools which you may find helpful. So I very much encourage you to visit wikiwatershed.org.
Perfect. Yeah, and you hop on there, you'll see links to the tools shared today, as well as some of the things you'll see in upcoming webinar sessions. And so that's just a helpful hub to bookmark there. But yeah, we'll make sure everyone has access to all of this. So thank you. Let's see, we have a question under layers in the Model My Watershed. What are the sources for the different stream networks? Is that one you can answer, Scott?
Yeah, great question. Again, you'll find that information in the technical resources. It depends on where you are in terms of the where you're modeling in the United States. So it happens in the Delaware Basin, we have higher resolution hydrology data than elsewhere in the country, but the data generally come from the National Hydrography Data Set, which is a federally organized assemblage of the nation's hydrology.
Awesome. And we had another good question. Has there been time to consider the expected impacts of the recent Supreme Court ruling that many may have seen, that, at least to our understanding, changed the definition of connected waterways, right? And this
yeah, that's right. That's something that a lot of us are considering, and there's obviously a lot of concern and discussion surrounding the Sackett decision. It's difficult to give a blanket answer because, for the most part, it depends on what state you live in, the extent to which that Supreme Court decision will affect protection of wetlands, because the individual states have control over their wetland protection laws. So even though the Sackett decision may in some states take wetlands off of the federal regulation, there are still state laws that would be in place in some states to protect those wetlands. So it's too soon to say what the ultimate impact is, but it's very much going to depend on what state you live in.
Okay. And I see there'll be a statement released later today too, from Stroud Water Research Center on that court ruling. So great. You guys are a great source of information on that, I'm sure, as these developments come and we start to understand the impacts. Any other questions we might have missed? I don't think we asked this one. Is there any info available on how buffer areas on farms could be productive for farmers? Example, the example they gave with nut trees.
There is not information on that available in any of the tools that I've talked about today, but I want to encourage you to go to our watershed restorations page on our website. We have a series of short fact sheets on different aspects of soil health practices, alternative agricultural practices, and I believe we may have some information on productive buffer habitats that would, for example, be you planting nut or fruit trees within riparian zones as a buffer action. So yeah, the link is there in the chat, stroudcenter.org/restoration. And within that page, you want to look down for the fact sheets at the bottom. So I encourage you to visit our restoration page. And if you can't find information there, please email someone within our restoration program for more information.
Awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, these are great questions, and thanks everyone for sticking around and your interest today and joining us. I think maybe we'll close out if there aren't any more questions. Scott, any last things you'd like to add?
Thank you for hosting, Emma, and thank you all for joining from around the world. It's been a pleasure to speak to all of you. So thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We look forward to seeing what the next 2 months hold. Get out there and take action. can't wait to see your bingo boards and all start to have a positive impact here together. So thank you, Scott. Thank you to everyone at the Stroud Center and everyone for joining. Have a great day.
Nice job.